sport to its knees?
Well, good morning again. Basically, the record book will show that Ferrari just dominated. That once these things go into the record book for posterity, for people to look back on. But the more serious problem is Formula One in crisis? And I don't think it's in crisis. I think that we certainly have to recognise that the sport is there for the public, for both viewers and people that turn up at Grand Prix. So we must provide motor racing that is entertaining. You know, they are spoilt for choice with other activities, but they put their money, they pay with their feet, they come, they watch on television, and it's up to the sport to provide interesting, exciting sport. But it's very difficult to, let's say, do what they do in America, where in other events like NASCAR or IRL, where it is totally artificially controlled. Formula One is not about artificial control, but at the same time, we have to not forget that when you get technical excellence, like we have seen this year from Ferrari, it can see people vote with their feet, and they're voting by walking away. Now, I know that by the time we get to Australia next year, the memories of that will be forgotten. Everybody will be positive and thinking about a new Grand Prix season, all the testing that will take place over the end of the season and into the beginning of the new year will generate new excitement. For sure, McLaren, Williams and their Michelin as partners, they're going to be up for it. But Ferrari, strong team. The key to it all, in my view, is Michael Schumacher. But Ben, what is Ferrari going to do? They're not going to take him out and retire, are they?
No way, no. They would love to see Michael, of course, go for an all-time record of 6 World Drivers' Championships. That will be their aim next season. It's up to everybody else to try and stop them doing that. But I have to say I'm optimistic that the likes of McLaren and Williams and Renault, for example, will close that gap. You know, some of the best brains in the business work for those teams, and we'll have to see what they can do. The cars are on track for the morning warm-up, and you're riding with the man who suffered that huge accident coming down to the corner where he went off yesterday.
Just listen for the throttle. Well, understandably, on his outlap, he's very cautious through there, but as everybody is also, this is his outlap, and he'll come back into the pit lane and have a check of the car and make sure everything is fine, and he'll talk to his engineers and just say, well, you know, I'm a racing driver, and this is what racing drivers do.
Yeah, best thing is to get straight back out there, and that's exactly what Alan's doing. There is the hero of the day yesterday, though, Takuma Sato, and it looks as though he's got the spare car. Well, it is his home race, so that makes all the sense in the world of Takuma Sato now rushing from his race car to his spare car, and that was a magnificent effort. Of course, remember, this is Honda territory. This Suzuka track was created by Honda in the early 60s, and here we are with Takuma Sato, a Japanese driver, having taken the fastest time for any of the Honda drivers, 4 Honda drivers in the Grand Prix, of course. And not only that, his best ever qualifying position, 7th place behind the best of the rest, behind the top 3 teams. So fantastic effort.
Yes, and I think I mean, you couldn't have wished for a better outcome in terms of qualifying a young man in his first year. It's not been easy. It's never easy your first year, particularly in a sport as sophisticated now as Formula One has become, just to learn how to be a driver with electronics all over the place.
He's done well. And Michael Schumacher jumping around, so it looks as though he may well have the spare car for the first time this weekend since he wrapped up the World Championship at Manicourt. That's been quite a long time that Rubens has had access to the spare car.
Yes, but mission's been accomplished. We've got Rubens now unassailable in 2nd place in the championship. So the contract says Michael has the first call of the spare car, and he's taken it up, and he's got the spare car, and he's back into it, or jumping between his car and the spare car as Rubens goes back to the more comfortable routine. It's actually a lot easier on a Sunday morning when you only have one car to concern yourself with, and you can just focus on that car. It's the car that you're most familiar with, jumping backwards and forwards between the race car and the spare car. Inevitably, there's always minor little differences between the 2 cars, and there'll be one that you'll feel slightly more comfortable with. And let's just look at Montoya as he comes through the 130R. Well, is there something going to happen here?
Oh, let's take a look. It's just bottoming a little bit on the way up.
Oh, no, bits of coming, well, bodywork or something coming from the right rear of the car, flapping. As Juan Pablo comes in, and he's in the garage now, and the Williams engineers will be working around that right-hand side of the car. Now, strange, because it looked like a bit of rubber rather than a bit of carbon fibre.
Almost looked like it could have been a piece of tape or something on the back of the car. They're having a good look at that now, having seen the replay themselves on the monitor. Carl,
right-hand rear bodywork on one car.
Now they are having a good look. I'm not sure that they were aware of that, until the replays.
No, I think that the replay, they just have watched it live as we have done, and they realised that something was loose or flapping around the rear suspension as Michael Schumacher competes. Well, goes out. This is coming through Spoon Corner on an out lap in what was either the spare or the race car. We can't quite determine just yet which one of the two it is, and then makes his way the uphill climb, then crests before he comes to 130R. Michael Schumacher, in fact, was by far and away the quickest car on the exit of this corner in qualifying at 306 kilometers per hour. Next up was David Coulthard, 6 kilometers short of what Michael was doing, and the Ferrari made it look so easy. He didn't even have to use all the road or the curb to achieve that maximum speed, and that's just, and if you like to sum up why Ferrari are so good this year, that one corner I think does it for me.
Yeah, the 306.9 kilometers per hour, that translates to 191 miles per hour on the exit of a corner, not the way in, on the way out of a corner. And of course the car scrubs off a lot of speed through the corner, even if you are flat on the throttle. I have to say it's a mighty impressive figure, and the fact that he was 6 kilometers per hour faster than anybody, he probably got more satisfaction from that list, the speed trap figures on the exit of 130R, than he did even out of the qualifying on pole position.
It's interesting, Ben, because where the speed trap is, it's on the straight, it's at that second intermediate sector, and Michael was actually the second quickest car through that at 313 kilometers per hour, which is about 195 miles an hour. So the Ferrari gets to that speed. Basically the aerodynamics then stall it out, but the fact that he was so quick and he lost so little on the, through 130R, where you'd expect with tyre scrub, I mean David Coulthard explained it just to us yesterday, you'd lose maybe 10 or 15 miles an hour, but he maintained it, and I mean that's where the efficiency of the Ferrari has been, I think, so outstanding all year. And I mean, over the years there's been classic Grand Prix cars. I mean, I can think of Lotus 25s and lots of Lotuses, in fact Lotus 72s, but this car, this Ferrari F2002, it will undoubtedly go down as one of the all-time classic Grand Prix cars.
Yeah, absolutely, quite agree with that, John. It's one of the greatest ever Grand Prix cars. You look at its dominance this year, only beaten on 2 occasions. In fact, the 2002 car coming in, of course, in Brazil for Michael, there was only the one car there. They started with the 2001 car, and even in Melbourne it was competitive, but the 2002's just been fantastic. Now Ralf Schumacher seems to have access to the spare car down at the Williams pit. Montoya wandering around while they fiddle around with his car. Look at that rear bodywork. And Juan Pablo, keeping an eye on perhaps what other setup changes they're making there on the spare car.
Takuma Sato, and just comes round. He's in fact coming up to complete a lap, so this will be effectively the first timed lap. In fact, he's driven into the pit lane, so just as the camera cut from one point to the other, he quickly dived into the pit lane. So he's still been jumping or jockeying between the spare and the race car, and of course again a new experience for Takuma to have that additional responsibility. So right now it's Mika Salo who is on a flying lap and comes through 130R down into this very tight chicane.
Very suitable, of course, that Mika Salo will be having his last Grand Prix here in Japan. It's where it all started. It was where his career began, when he drove a Lotus. And of course he had an extensive experience of racing here in Japan. He's married to a Japanese girl, very, very fond of the whole country and of being out here. So very suitable that his last Grand Prix should take place at Suzuka. A little bit of practice starts. The launch control systems being checked by McLaren as the car heads out onto the circuit. Kimi Raikkonen that was. David Coulthard sitting in the pits at the moment.
So it's back to the serious job of completing another run. Michael Schumacher now up to speed, and just having looked down to see what he's showing on the first sector. We haven't even got a time yet. This is just his out lap, in fact.
Interesting, of course, his dominance in the races this year, not quite so much matched by qualifying, although yesterday was a beautiful example of a fantastic qualifying effort, but he's ended up with the same number of pole positions as Juan Pablo Montoya has this year. But it seems funny, doesn't it, that they've reached parity, if you like, on the qualifying, but to be so different in terms of race results.
Well, I think there's a period in the middle of the season where the tyre package from Michelin, Juan Pablo Montoya's skill to drive the car at that very, very high limit, I mean, sometimes do things that we watched it in qualifying. We rode with him in qualifying on many occasions. We went, just drew our breath. But he got away with it, and he had a sequence of long pole positions. But of course, it never materialised in the race. And tyre choices. I mean, Michelin also learning with their second partner now in Formula One with McLaren. Both teams requiring different requirements from the tyre company, and that has been an issue, I think, that really has held back the development in the way that Bridgestone have been able to do with Ferrari. Had there been a soulless team, unlike what Pierre Dupasquier said, nevertheless, I think that sometimes having two teams can split the technical path, particularly if both cars have got different tyre requirements.
Well, remember, this is the 100th Grand Prix for Bridgestone this weekend, and they would love to finish off this successful cooperation with Ferrari this year with victory in front of their staff, their employees, and the big bosses too. It would be a fantastic way to finish off a brilliant season. Let's just watch Michael on the latter part of the lap. He's got the Sauber just a little ahead of him, of Felipe Massa, and as quick as ever through 130R, even with a fair amount of fuel on board, as the car now is in race trim, remember, as opposed to qualifying trim yesterday.
But we will be looking at a two-stop race, because tyre wear and tyre degradation is very high on the Suzuka circuit. Got 136.716, and that's, well, it's what, 3 and a bit, 4 seconds off what he did in qualifying. So we go to Kimi Raikkonen. We saw him leave the pits a moment or two ago. So the Finn slightly down in that first sector, about 0.2 of a second down. Comes through this long turns 12 and 13, then into the first part of Spoon Corner. Oh, again, look at Raikkonen. He just pulls on the steering wheel, doesn't worry about what the rear of the car is doing, and he's got so much confidence. He's grown into the McLaren team very rapidly indeed, though in fairness he was not able to match his own teammate David Coulthard, who again has out-qualified in 2 races in concession now that Coulthard has got it across Kimi Raikkonen.
Yeah, he's done a good job the last couple of Grand Prix particularly, but Raikkonen always well worth watching. Engine revs just over the 18,000 mark, and he's up to second there behind Michael Schumacher in the times in the fairly early stages of the warm-up. Went a bit wide at that corner yesterday in qualifying, said later on that felt that might have cost him a fraction of a second.
Ben, we watched it. The reason he went wide is he went into it so quickly, he just couldn't get the speed off, and he had to let the car go out, otherwise he would have been in problems. 0.2 of a second up from Michael Schumacher on his 6th lap of the morning, and again showing improvements, quickest of all in all those sectors.
Yeah, and fastest on that speed trap again, 289, some 9 kilometres faster than anyone else so far on the exit of 130R, so showing great pace, down to 136.589 already. Lap record last year was a 136.944, so he's already under last year's lap record.
So Felipe Massa now gets it slightly wrong. There he goes off. He got it wrong in the entry into the first part of Spoon, and then of course he's got to back out of it and make sure he gets the car back onto track. Ralf Schumacher in fact has joined his brother. He's now second quickest, but he's about again that half second or so behind Michael with the dominant Ferrari.
Again, yes, it's looking like the same teams that featured in qualifying up there at the moment in the warm-up. Fisichella's up to 5th, Villeneuve is 6th, and then Sato as well. Interesting looking at the qualifying sheet in particular, that they've actually, the top 6 have actually qualified in number order. Michael Schumacher, car number 1, Barrichello, car number 2, then David Coulthard, car 3, etc., down to Juan Pablo Montoya in car number 6.
You know, in a way I find it rather spooky. I mean, I don't know why. It didn't occur to us at the time, but just after looking at the results of qualifying, it stood out as 1, 2, 2, etc., down to 6. And I thought, hold on, what's going on here? This doesn't feel quite right. It's just, you know,
something slightly odd, yes, but well, I suppose we come to expect it, the top teams as they are, and they have qualified in the top positions. Of course, the 4th best team last year was Sauber. This time they're looking to finish as the 5th best team, but behind them, what I'm really looking forward to, in fact, this afternoon, is that battle that's going on between Jordan, BAR and Jaguar. Now, of course, you've got Jordan and BAR, both with Honda power, both on 7 points in the Constructors' Championship, and Jordan have out-qualified BAR for the race.
Yes, Jordan currently 8th in the Manufacturers' Championship, and they stand a very good chance with their 2 drivers in the top 10 of maybe certainly getting 1 point and putting themselves maybe up to 7th place and putting Honda down to 8th, or possibly getting more than that 1 point and then threatening Jaguar. So it's a lot to play for Eddie Jordan. This is going to be maybe the most important race of the season, as we join Takuma Sato as he finishes a lap, comes down that long right-hand corner across start finish line, goes to 6th quickest on a 1:37.7, just behind his own teammate, who's a 1/10 of a second faster.
So proving that that qualifying performance was no flash in the pan. Not quite the best Japanese performance on home territory. I thought it might have been when we saw that qualifying session yesterday, but just having looked back over the records, Satoru Nakajima actually qualified 6th here.
Box, Taku, box.
At Suzuka back in 1988, driving again with a Honda engine, but on that occasion it was in the back of a Lotus.
So Takuma Sato being requested to return to the pits, having completed a lap which sees him 6th quickest, some 2.3 seconds down. Nevertheless, it's very tight around that 6th, 7th and 8th right now, because you've got Fisichella 5th, Sato 6th, Barrichello was out of the frame, he's now jumped up to 7th. Then it's Villeneuve, and that was really, it was 3 Honda engine cars, 5th, 6th and 7th, and you can imagine Jacques Villeneuve again, a very feisty Grand Prix in the US, picked up the final points in the championship there for himself and his team, and that's really what's put pressure on Jordan right now. But they have responded magnificently, and to get both drivers into the top 10, 7th and 8th, 4th row of the grid, I think is a highlight for Jordan's season.
Yeah, let's hope they get some points at the end of it. Of course, at the end of the season, that's Panis. Talking of BAR
yes,
Hondas.
Top of the S's now. We've seen lots of mechanical problems for Olivier Panis. Is that another one, or is that just simply down to Olivier? And that was coming through turns 3 and 4, in fact, in the S's. But it appears to be just simply down to the driver. Well, he ran wide on the exit, there's the reason why. And rather than try to drive back on track at a difficult part, he just goes straight down the grass and rejoins where he can come in and blends back in without affecting any of the cars that are coming through, one of the Minardis and Jaguars.
Just watched on the pits channel that Jacques Villeneuve, there he is in fact, just getting into the race car again. He's got the spare car though, just seen him drive back into the... Oh, and off goes Fisichella it is.
Indeed, down at turn 1, actually it's between 1 and 2. So all of a sudden Fisichella is going to be beached, he's not going to be able to continue. The car just going to be bogged down, and Gary Anderson, look, absolutely, I mean...
Quick as you can.
We're just saying what a fantastic job the team and the drivers have done, and there he is, Giancarlo Fisichella, maybe one of the most unexpected drivers to see in the gravel, in what would appear to have been an unforced error. Let's look again as he comes down. This is the front straight, goes into turn 1, the car looks fine. Watch for the back end as it comes around. He runs very wide up. He caught the curb.
12 minutes left.
Then he was suddenly out on the outside of the corner in 2, and that was it all over.
When you get on the dirty stuff on the outside, so little grip. And the gravel trap, I think, did the job just enough, didn't it? Didn't make contact with the barrier.
I think he just got away with it. It was pretty close. There's no marks on the barrier, and the wing stays vertical in its normal position. But just another little setback, and you can just imagine when you get to be as competitive as Jordan have been this weekend, you sort of forget about how difficult it's been throughout the year. Now, little error like that, I'm sure that Fisichella will be made feel that he did something much worse than in fact it turned out to be.
Still better to do it now, I suppose, than in the race this afternoon. They cannot afford mistakes like that this afternoon. They have to stay in the race and hope for a little bit of reliability problems through through the race itself. But usually see quite a few finishers at this race. It's the last race of the season, and most teams have got their reliability issues sorted out by this time. Last year we had some 17 finishers, so good finishing record usually here at Suzuka, despite it being a tough track. Riding with Schumacher.
And just doesn't it look so easy? Well, misses the apex there by a considerable margin. Michael Schumacher, he's just on an out lap. This is just the beginning of the process that he had spent a few minutes earlier doing, back into the pits. And maybe just another little check, maybe a small error or a small change that they wanted to fix. So he goes back out.
Montoya's on track again. He was sitting in the pits for a long time. They obviously having to sort out problems, so he's now beginning to pick up pace, although in fact no, he's still going quite slowly, very slowly through the first sector.
Yes, and even through the second sector, so Juan Pablo just, I mean, but he is on a flying lap, and
Oh.
There he is, Michael Schumacher and Montoya getting together again as they did in Saturday practice, where unfortunately Michael got in the way of Montoya through the Degner curves, and one could sense that there was not much pleasure between the two drivers as Montoya pulls over to the right to make sure that that starting grid he is going to start from on the right hand side of the track is as clean as possible. Maybe that's more his motivation here this morning, rather than thinking about just getting the car set up.
Let's take a look at this again. Montoya was really struggling. That was weird.
Well, he wasn't paying attention. He was looking, he was trying to find track position. He was behind Barrichello and he didn't want to overrun because he knew Barrichello would be slowing down. So suddenly he didn't see the speed at which that was, okay, it was careless, but it wasn't intended.
No, but be pretty careful because they're still approaching that chicane very quickly indeed, although it's a tight corner. Montoya now is up to speed for the first time that we've seen in this session so far. Just to let you know that Alan McNish is doing a good job. He's currently 12th fastest and 8th fastest through the speed trap on that exit of 130R. That's pretty impressive when you consider the size of the accident he had yesterday.
Well, the driver can put these things behind. I mean, the way to put it out of your mind is just to sort of put up a barrier, blot it out. And as long as the car feels good, and clearly the Toyota feels good to Alan this morning, his instincts and his reactions are unchanged. He's a racing driver. There is a yellow flag out. Oh, it's still 4 Fisichella. It's still down at turn 1s and 2. Well, Montoya going to the edge of the envelope there, coming through 130R. So this is his first clear flying lap.
Is he chatting away even as he goes through the chicane there? That's how intent he is on trying to get this car sorted. Wasn't happy after qualifying at all. Of course, he's been beaten by his teammate, which doesn't help. They will be side by side on the grid effectively. Well, there's the staggered grid as ever, but and Massa very annoyed. They're not at all happy that Jacques Villeneuve held him up.
No, he got a big lock-up, and looking across, he would not have been pleased with Jacques Villeneuve. Again, it's this problem. You're coming in on a slow lap. You look at your mirrors before you come through 130R. There's nobody there, and then as they run into the chicane, all of a sudden a car is overrunning you. It is incumbent on that driver who's going slowly to make sure you're not on the racing line. Look how close Massa got to running into the back, and probably running over the back of Villeneuve's BAR.
That was very tight indeed. Let's take another look here from onboard Massa. Oh, it doesn't look quite so bad from there, but it looked that's partly the effect of the camera. They were very, very close. Look at this.
That camera slightly distorts it wasn't quite as close as we thought it was from some of the other shots. There the hand comes up, and well, he's quite rightly indignant about what Jacques Villeneuve was doing, and so you might call it carelessness.
So Montoya has picked up the pace somewhat. He's 10th fastest overall, but Michael Schumacher last time around went even quicker than he had previously, so he's on a 36.4, Barrichello on a 36.6, and the two Ferraris about half a second faster than everyone else.
Not much traffic.
It certainly is, Juan. It's very, very busy. You've got 3 cars to get past. And some are coming in, others are on laps.
Turn 1, just change to turn 1 into 2. If we still got oversteered, maybe second go for left front brake.
Look at the traffic, still cars rejoining. That's Panis coming back out by the looks of things. And the Ferrari that he's now behind is indeed Michael Schumacher. Don't know whether he's going to be able to learn anything by following him. Let's take another look. This was the traffic coming up. Look at them all. And that's Michael ahead, getting past, I think it was Webber, and Montoya then, just squeezing through.
Again, it's all about just finding that bit of track position. Webber did the right thing, got out of the way, couldn't do any more than he was doing. Saw Montoya bearing down, and he just pulled over onto that little bit of green painted concrete. As Alan McNish again comes through the 130R, this time no problem, and the car looks fine. Alan McNish currently in 13th place, best time on 38.729.
Yeah, good effort from Alan. I think it was Young actually, just looking on our track map. I think it was Alex Young just moving out of the way of that little bunch. It's very hard to tell from that overhead shot, but Webber is out there as well. Both of the Minardis currently running as we go back on board with Michael.
Well, he's got a fastest first sector, and obviously trying pretty hard in the second sector. We'll wait to see what it is.
Let's listen up here.
Well, 10th and a half up. Just a little bit of left foot braking, but basically the throttle stays wide open.
He's 10 kilometres per hour faster than anyone on the exit of 130R at the moment. Next up is David Coulthard. That is very, very impressive indeed. And Michael Schumacher, well, we know he loves this place, and he's proving it again. He goes faster again with a 1:36.2, well beneath last year's lap record set by his brother. Of course, the track has changed very slightly, so it's all very well talking about lap records, but in fact, the track has shortened very slightly because they've made a few changes to runoff areas and slightly profiled one or two of the corners. They haven't really changed the layout, but will create new lap records.
Sato comes down to the part of track where Fisichella went off. Oh, and Munter was...
Is it Ralph, actually, I think?
Yeah, it was. Again, in the Degner corner. That's... And Ralph, is he going to get out of there? He's just about going to make it. That's where we saw Montoya go off on Friday, hit a big shunt into the tire barriers.
He's got away with it again, though, Ralph. He had that spin as well, didn't he? Just down here.
Yes, he had it in practice on Saturday morning. He spun out of Degner too and managed to keep the car at a very narrow part of track, off the barriers on one side and off the wall on the other.
Well, it's a busy time for the Williams drivers. Here's Kimi Raikkonen, currently 5th fastest. Barrichello gradually trying to improve, close the gap between himself and his teammate. But Raikkonen goes faster than Barrichello. Good lap, that.
So for the first time we're seeing the Michelin tired cars really look competitive. This is Ralf Schumacher coming out of the Dunlop, turns into Degner, runs the curb. In fact, the car never looked like it was going to make the corner anyway. But again, Ralph's skill keeps the car on the racetrack. Did that yesterday brilliantly. Not going to do an awful lot for that set of tyres, I have to say. No,
I was just thinking that as well. They are not going to be in the best of shape. This was Raikkonen a moment ago, just before he set that really quick lap. Good exit out of 130R, and that's put him to 2nd fastest. But Barrichello's on a quick lap himself at the moment, so this may well re-establish the Ferraris 1-2. Let's just take a look. Is it quicker than Raikkonen? Yes, so it is Ferrari 1 and 2 again. Then McLaren 3 and 4. Ralf Schumacher 5th. Trulli is up to 6th. He was a bit disappointed yesterday. Trulli went well in the first part of the session, but didn't really gain like others did when the temperature dropped after the interval after McNish's accident.
The Coulthard, 2nd quickest through this corner in qualifying, and still pretty impressive. Coulthard 4th quickest just behind Raikkonen, so about 3/10 of a second between the two McLaren Mercedes drivers.
Slightly funny sound we're getting off the microphone on that one today.
And also a little bit about somebody who's come on, the Jaguars coming down. That was Irvine coming out of the pits.
There is McNish, still doing a great job. He's 9th fastest. Good effort from Alan McNish. Well, he's a true pro. He is one of the most professional race drivers in whatever category he's competed in over the years.
2.5 minutes left.
And able to get straight back in the car.
So let's see whether Ralph... There's the tyres that he spun with.
Snapping away on me.
Snapping away on him. Yeah, well, maybe using the curb may be part of the reason. But, of course, the Ferrari seems to quite often
2 minutes left.
get away with things like that and still be forgiving. So
yes, when he turned into Degner, the car looked like it was already on its way into a spin, and you could imagine he was well off the throttle, and that, of course, would have encouraged the car to spin.
Well, it's all fairly busy down there at the Williams pit. Meanwhile, Barrichello, having set that 2nd fastest time, now comes back in. There's just 0.3 of a second between himself and teammate Michael Schumacher, looking to try and achieve another 1-2 finish. He's never actually finished 2nd here, Barrichello. The best he's had is a 4th place finish, so he'd be happy with that.
Well, just doing another little launch control start as David Coulthard. This is a replay of Coulthard with Irvine. Well, there's the hand coming out. I think that signal that he thought maybe Eddie could have been a little bit more generous on the pit lane exit. He didn't need to pinch David quite as much, so David sends back one of those signals that we do see from time to time.
Always the best of mates, of course, Coulthard and Irvine. And here we are, just riding with Michael once again. Putting in quite a few laps in this morning's warm-up. Interesting to note.
I'm sure that's all about tyres and tyre performance and checking out and just saying what they will ultimately do. We do expect to see a 2-stop. It was interesting that last year that Michael stopped relatively early, stopped laps 18 and lap 36, where on the other hand the McLarens went into 23 and 39 for Coulthard. Hakkinen went 24 and 38. So McLaren's
見ててね、タイムみんな結構。車のガソリンと停車時はやはり同じような状況です。自分のね、スタートラインを毎週ストレートでゴール取らないでイン側通ってたっていうのが、スタートで僕も連絡そうですね。
Back on and continue.
So the Ferraris once again topping the times in the morning warm-up, but McLaren showing well, I have to say. Raikkonen very close to Barrichello's time, only 0.02 of a second slower than the Ferrari. Coulthard not far behind. The Williams still, that little gap between McLaren and Williams, I think that's given the Williams team something to think about this weekend. They do not seem to have got their car working as effectively here as Williams have this weekend. Let's just see Montoya. This was a moment ago. Montoya getting out, Patrick Head getting stuck in, and fairly vehement discussion going on between these two like-minded people, really, in terms of being hard racers, the both. Let's just take a look at the classification then. Schumacher and Barrichello, then the two McLarens, and then Ralf Schumacher. Jarno Trulli, we said, not terribly happy with his qualifying performance yesterday, but good performance in this morning's warm-up. So Renault looking to finish the season in style. Felipe Massa in a good 7th place. He was also very disappointed after qualifying. Got a bit held up once or twice. Didn't feel he had a representative opportunity. Fisichella 8th, despite putting it into the gravel trap. Mika Salo 9th in the Toyota. And then Jacques Villeneuve in 10th place in the BAR Honda. Then Nick Heidfeld, Takuma Sato, as we saw, had a pretty good run, but just ran wide at the end, no major problems. There's Alan McNish's time, good effort that, 37.734. Just look how close those times are in that midfield area. That's where the real battles are going to be taking place in this race. Button down in 14th, Montoya only 15th fastest. Not a great session for him. Behind him, Irvine and Panis, and then De La Rosa, and of course the two Minardis at the back, Mark Webber and Alex Young.
It's interesting just to look at Alan McNish's time this morning, when you'd assume that he's in a race setup. That 1:37. He did, in fact, before his accident, a 35.1. Now, with the amount of fuel that you would expect him to have on for a two-stop strategy, just to be within 2 or so seconds is pretty impressive. And I'd maybe wondered, did Toyota take a little bit of fuel out and just let him drive himself back in, rather than worrying too much about going for an out-and-out race setup.
So Kimi Raikkonen, let's hope he gets a finish today. He's had 11 non-finishes so far this year.
So a finish for the Finn would be yes, a bit unnecessary that. So
trying to cool off a bit.
Yeah, interesting that every little consideration by the teams, but particularly McLaren's attention to detail. As obviously he's getting quite warm and still nowhere near midday yet.
No, exactly. I was just thinking, I wonder how hot it's going to be for the start of the race if it's he's trying to cool down already at this time of day. And we'll just have to see. Absolutely cloudless sky, beautiful weather conditions. I have to say, John, it looks as though we're all set for a dry race. I think the only wet race or rain-affected race we've had this year was the British Grand Prix. We seem to have, we've gone through the season with pretty good weather conditions generally.
By and large, yes, it has. And when we've had wet periods in practice or in qualifying sessions, we have seen the advantage of that Bridgestone intermediate tyre. But here today at the Suzuka Raceway, it is just magnificent. And behind, as Peter explained to us, behind that grandstand, There's this huge Ferris wheel, there's all sorts of that vertical. That's one of those things where you sit on it and you get to about 25 G as you get rocketed skyward. But there's the huge shopping malls that every form of memorabilia known to racing drivers, and even some that are created specifically for this particular market. And then there's the motel where usually the drivers stay because it enables them to get to and from the circuit by foot, but they have to walk through this avenue of fans. And I mean, it's amazing just to see the way that Japanese Grand Prix fans, they just hero worship everybody who drives a Grand Prix car.
Well, it's fantastic to see a brilliant atmosphere for the final Grand Prix of the season. Sometimes it's been the decisive Grand Prix in the World Championship. Of course, this year, a slightly different story. The World Drivers' Championship being settled earlier than ever when Michael Schumacher wrapped it up at Manicourt. Ferrari continuing that theme, wrapping up second place in the Drivers' title with Rubens Barrichello dominating the Constructors' Championship. In fact, if they get